Welcome to the Radiant Visalia podcast. Join us at one of our two services, 9 a.m. and 10:45 a.m. Download the Church Center app or visit our website, radiantvisalia.com, to stay connected with us. All right, enjoy.
There is a heavenly city that I'm compelled to find.
All right, great. So Ashley, this is the play. I first met you right here in this office.
Yeah.
Your story is of particular interest to me because you came to faith and you came to this church during a time when no one was coming to this church because we were shut down. So your story is really cool, and I just want to share it. Came to faith might be a bit strong, but because you were raised Catholic.
Yeah, I was a Catholic before, or at least in a sense of the word. I was Catholic. I said I was Catholic. I didn't exactly go to mass and stuff like that since I was younger, but yeah, I was raised Catholic. Went to catechism, had my first communion and all that jazz. My grandparents had this huge cross on their wall. It was kind of scary at the end of the hall. It's still there, but it's yeah, so I was raised Catholic. I was raised pretty Catholic.
And then at what point did you start to feel like, so I think it was high school and college, you started to feel like I no longer, explain to me what happened in high school and college for you.
Well, as I was leaving elementary school to middle school, my parents got a divorce.
Okay.
So my entire end of my elementary school career, middle school, high school, it was just a very long, drawn out, ugly process with lots of family, emotional, occasional, physical drama and things like that. So there was a time in there where I think I just kind of stopped believing in God. It kind of happened unconsciously, I guess, because I didn't really realize it at the time. And when people would ask, if people would ask, hey, what are you? Or, do you believe in anything? And I was like, yeah, I'm Catholic.
Yeah.
But it was kind of just to say oh yeah, I'm Catholic because that's the way I was raised technically. But I didn't actually believe it in that sort of sense. So as I got into college. And
you went to Humboldt State, right?
Yes, I went to COS actually for community college, and then I transferred to Humboldt State.
Yeah.
And so at COS, I same thing, kind of, I'm Catholic. Okay, sure, yeah. But then as I transferred to Humboldt State, I started to go back and forth a lot more. Than I did at COS, whether or not I believed in God, and started actually wonder what's going on in that sort of area. Because there are so many people around the world who are faith-based, who believe in something, who will stake their life on it, that there is something bigger than them out there.
Yeah.
And that was always just such a crazy idea for me. Moving into college and moving through college and stuff, especially being a STEM major, being a science major. Yeah. So you would say that that major wasn't exactly friendly to faith? No, it's not. I feel like it's kind of taboo in a sense. You either are comfortable with certain people talking about it, or you're not, because it's just there's no hardcore proof, there's no facts, there's no evidence, there's nothing.
You can't put it under the microscope.
You can't see it. You can't explicitly say, this and this leads to this. And this is how we know that there's a God. So it's a very taboo subject, I feel like, in science. And so it can pull you in either direction, really, as you're talking to people or even exploring faith and trying to figure out your own, or if you have any, and things. Which is where I found myself. Sometimes I was very open and comfortable with just being I'm Catholic, whether or not I truly believed I was Catholic or had faith in anything. I believed. I grew up very positive, and I think I'm a positive person, but until recently I realized, wow, in regards to faith and, believing in things, having faith in really anything. I was pretty negative. I was a pretty negative person.
Yeah.
But
and then that's like a little bit of what happened is like, so you moved home from Humboldt State and you started going through a tough time, and then you started reconsidering where you stood, or you started searching because you were going through a really difficult time. Is that how you would say it?
Yeah. I moved home because I had already started to go through a tough time while I was at Humboldt. I mean, it's beautiful up there, but I was getting really depressed. I was offered a master's degree and I didn't take it. I decided to come home because I was just super depressed. I was missing my family. I could feel that something was wrong. Something was just deeply wrong, and I had no idea why. So I went home thinking that it'd make it better. Because, everybody has this idea of what home is and what it feels like. And I went home and nothing was like that anymore. Things don't stay the same, and that's okay. That's life. Life changes and you have to change with it. You have to adapt. But I came home expecting to go back into a routine, to be inserted back into a family where I thought that there was some semblance of what I knew of a family. And there wasn't one anymore. So that was really hard for me.
Like you felt like you had no home.
Yeah. Even though I was around family and I thought coming home would be better, I was like, wow, I could have just stayed in Humboldt. Like I did things. I was basically a family with with the roommates that I had there, and we did family things together. I was like, I felt more of a family while I was there than I am here with my actual family. So that was hard. That was really hard.
So you came home though, and you did make some new friends or meet up with old friends. Like, how did you end up? Because I know a part of your story is starting to make and have Christian friends, or friends that maybe you didn't know were Christians, but you started playing soccer together or something on Monday nights. Or...
Yeah, I did.
Sorry, I feel like I just told your story. Anyway, go ahead.
No, that's it's essentially what happened. Because of some of those things I was going through, I started to, I guess I'm now literally kind of realizing right now, I was looking for people to connect with, people to reconnect with, old friends and stuff like that. So I started to reach out, and not only did I find my job in Exeter with some friends that I had gone to school with at COS, which was in a lab and stuff, and people there didn't really have faith or anything, or at least not many, and it was a relatively constant discussion, just because it's an interesting topic of discussion. But there was that, and then I started to play soccer over in Fresno. So I drive back and forth every day to go to work from Exeter to Fresno and back and forth. So, but anyway, I started to play soccer in Fresno, and it was the oddest thing to me, because the first day I went out there, before we all started to play, they prayed, and it was just so odd for me, just because even though I had grown up religious in a religious sense, I wasn't used to that. Like, my family still didn't go to church every Sunday. It wasn't a regular part of our routine. It was just, pray at home, do what you need to at home. And there's nothing wrong with that, nothing against that if you don't feel comfortable going to a church or anything like that. There's nothing wrong with that. But it was completely new to me. It was completely new to me and kind of abstract because I was just super uncomfortable.
Did you close your eyes? Or did you keep your eyes open?
I did. It was more of like, so I was kind of like,
I
was kind of like looking around as I'm just like, okay. And then, I mean, it was a relatively quick prayer, just asking for, safety and things like that, and that God watch over us and bless the community and things like that. Which I'm a lot more comfortable with now. But so that's how that started. So you started
then asking some of the questions that you had about faith. You started asking some of those people that you were playing soccer with. Just kind of processing your journey with them. Is that what started to happen?
No, actually. So because of some of the things I was going through and I really didn't realize things were getting better, I came to another juncture in my life where I was like, oh, again, I started asking myself like, oh, like what's this thing called religion? Why are there so many of them? What is, what is God? And, what's this thing that everybody's talking about? What's this thing that everybody feels the need to like explain and things like that? Just this die-hard belief that people have. Like, what is it? Am I missing something? Yeah. I was like, am I missing something from all of that? Like, there's so many people in the world, like I said earlier, who have a faith that base their purpose in this world off of their faith and what they believe. And I was like, am I missing something? Is there something to that? And so I started to do what I do best as a scientist. I started to do research. I got books. I listened to things.
Like you just checked them out at the library, or you just got online and.
Well, I started asking my dad if he had any books, and he was like, "Yeah," because he had similar questions. And previously, and earlier in my life, I'd talked to the people who came up to your doors and stuff like that. And those and sometimes I would just sit there and talk with them, like, "Okay, like why do you believe this?" And like what are you doing?
Yeah.
Like, why do you believe? Why do you believe this? And stuff like that. So, just like talk to other people from different religions just to get different perspectives and viewpoints. But yeah, so I started looking up books and I checked out books. I was given books by my dad and stuff. And I just started reading and I was like, I should also probably read from the source. And in my case, since I was Catholic at that point, my source would be the Holy Bible, which is right there. But yeah, so I started to read it and I was like, I guess there's no better place to start than in the beginning. So I started in the beginning. And then I started to realize that more people around me than I had anticipated did believe in God, were either Catholic or Christian, or they had faith. They had faith. They believed in God, and that's when I started asking a couple of them more questions, like, hey, what is God? Like, what do you think God is? Or like, where should I start? Like, this is such a big question. Like, I don't even know where to start in the Bible. I'm starting in the beginning. Is that the right place to start? And they helped direct me there. They were there when I had questions. And eventually I had a friend from soccer. He sent me a video of Radiance, of Radiance Easter service and your sermon there. It's a sermon, right?
Sure.
Okay. And so I watched it, and that was the first sermon or mass or anything that I'd seen in a really long time, very long time. And yeah, it was super, super great. And soon after that happened, I found out that quite a few people who went to soccer, who I was asking some questions to, and by quite a few, I mean probably like 3. But there are quite a few of the people out there who I did find believed in God. But anyway, those few did go to Radiant. They went to Radiant, and I found that out a little bit later when I met you and we started chatting a little bit more.
So tell that story, because you came with a friend just to go to Component and get a donut, and you were like, what's in those yellow doors? That was your thought? So you started doing research as a scientist.
Yeah, so I started doing research as a scientist, and it was brought to my attention that I can't approach faith that way. Because it doesn't work that way. Because God doesn't exactly work through your mind. He works through your heart, and through your soul. And while that was brought to my attention, I didn't get it. I was like, what do you mean? Like, what do you mean I can approach things this way? This is how I approach every aspect of my life. What am I supposed to do now? So that's around the time when I was coming back from work one day. I wanted to try these really awesome donuts that I heard about. So I ordered some, and a friend and I were looking for some place to have some coffee or tea so we could have them with our donuts, because, you know, it's such a great pairing.
Yeah, totally.
But Component ended up being closed, and it's like a nice little area right there. So we just kind of sat there. It was shaded, and we just kind of ate our donuts and chatted. And I'd been to Component before. I'd been to this area in downtown Visalia before. But I had never noticed this building. I just never noticed this building. And we were chatting, while we were talking, I was facing the doors right here, and they just seemed so bright. It's kind of hard to explain, but yeah, they were just really, really bright, and I became so curious about just about this building and what was going on inside. I mean, it was during COVID, so probably nothing. There's probably nothing going on inside. But I became really, really curious about it. And every time I would just look over, the doors just seemed excessively bright. I mean, they're yellow, so they're already bright, but they just seemed really, really bright. And that's really the only way that I guess I can explain it.
So you come knock on the door. Yeah.
So eventually, after we're done chatting for a bit, I'm like, hey, do you know what's in that building? I asked her about it, and she's like, no, no, I don't. She's also not from here, though, so, you know, why would she know? But so after a bit more, I was just like, you know, I'm gonna go knock on the door. You know, maybe somebody's inside. And I was like, but, you know, maybe we can figure out what's inside, what's going on. And she was like, okay, sure, let's go knock on this yellow door and see what happens. And I was like, yeah, let's go. Let's go. Do you want to come with me? And she was like, yeah, okay. So I came. I knocked on the yellow doors. And I wasn't anticipating anything to happen, because I was, you know, it's COVID, it's dark inside. So I knocked a few times, nothing happened, and we're about to walk away, and I'm just like, I'll just peer through real quick just to get a look and to see what's inside, because I'm curious, and thankfully curiosity didn't kill the cat this time. But then I saw you and Pastor Mike starting to walk over. So I was like, oh, cool. There are people inside. And so from there, you let us inside. You were like, hey, I'm Travis. And I asked what they are. You gave us a little tour, and you're just like, yeah, these are church offices. And you gave us a tour of everything. And then we're like, okay, cool. And then we left. And that was about it. That was our first interaction. And I was like, wow, that's just so interesting, because at this point I had been doing my research for a few months, or a couple months now. And then when I was leaving back to my car, I got in my car, I was getting ready to drive back home to Fresno. And I was like, I have some questions, like maybe they can help me with some of these questions that I have. And my biggest question at the time was like, how do I pray? How do I know that I'm doing it right? Why do I feel things sometimes? And why do I not feel things other times? And, just all these sorts of stuff to do with prayer and things, and that I had no idea about. I still kind of need to. Still dabbling in a lot. But so I came back. Needless to say, I came back because I had some questions, and I figured, they're church people, because you guys didn't say that you were pastors or anything. I was just like, okay, they're church people. They're in a church. They're working right now. Maybe they wouldn't mind helping me with some questions that I have. So I came back, and thankfully you guys were still here. And you guys let me in when I knocked again. You guys let me in, and we sat down. We chatted. I was sitting there, and then I moved here. So, rather, I was standing over here, and then I moved to sit down. And that was honestly the first time that I can say that I ever felt the presence of God, or at least that I can remember ever felt the presence of God. And it was mind blowing. I was completely blown away. It was such a beautiful experience. And I remember I don't cry very often. I started to tear up, and I was really, really trying not to cry.
Strangers and
just because I was also kind of uncomfortable, even when you guys like prayed for me and were answering my questions and stuff. It's just, it was just a whole new subject for me, a whole new topic of conversation that I never really had before. And even in church, even in Mass, I never felt any connection to God. It's God in the Catholic Church, I feel like, is very, very big, very domineering, and you're supposed to be afraid. And you're supposed to repent and all these things, and not that you're not supposed to, because you are, but they don't give you the sense that God is personal, that you have a relationship with God. In the Catholic Church, God is over there, and he just needs to be revered. And that's it. God is this big thing that you don't have the privilege of getting to know because we're flawed, because we're humans. But sitting here was the first time I actually felt the presence of God, and I felt light as air. I felt like a little sunbeam. And
sitting here, it was interesting because like it also dawned, you didn't know this, but your friends, your Christian friends in Fresno, that's when you found out this is their church. You didn't know you had come into their church. You just came into a church. Yeah. Then you found out it was Radiant. And then I remember towards the end of the time, you were like, did you yell off of a parking structure?
That's right.
Which is something that happened in the Easter sermon, but you didn't immediately connect the dots. Like, this is the guy, this is the Easter sermon, and this is the church that my friends go to. And it dawned on you after praying, like, that's the guy who did a mass off the parking structure. Yeah,
I did. I was a little slow to make that connection because I knew that some of them all went to the same church because they would come together in a group sometimes. And I knew it was from this area because they all said they're from Visalia, or, the surrounding area. So I knew that, but I didn't put the connection like, oh, they sent me this sermon. Yeah. Oh, they all come together. They must be from this church and stuff like that. But yeah, I was a little, that was a pretty funny connection to make because I remember you asking me about a few of them, and I was just like, oh, like you know them too? Yeah. I was so confused. I know. And then I started, and then I was like, wait, like he looks kind of familiar. Yeah. And the most obviously the most outstanding thing for me, because I brought it up, was like, did you yell off of the top of a parking structure? Was that you walking around an empty COVID town and yelling off the top of an empty parking structure? Was that you? Yes. Which is great, by the way. It's fabulous.
It's okay.
But yeah.
So
it was amazing.
We gave you a book to read because that's what Christians do.
Yes. Another book for me.
Yeah,
I love books.
Book. But then you end up connecting to the Fresno crew and go to a house church there with John and Karina. Yeah. Yeah, and connecting with some people up in Fresno.
Mm-hmm. That's exactly what happened. And then I also found out that John and Karina were not only connected to Radiant, they were also connected to other soccer people there that I was becoming friends with that didn't go to Radiant but went to just a different church locally in Fresno. Yeah. And so seeing the way everybody was connected and the way everybody was really helping me was amazing. Yeah. It was just mind-boggling.
And maybe a little bit of that longing for home or to belong. Yeah.
And for a community. Yeah. And in the house church, that was great. I started to get connected more so to people that were in Fresno that did enjoy going to Radiant. Aside from just my friends who lived here in Visalia because it was hard to commute back and forth on the even maybe the days I wasn't working or staying after to just try and become part of the community here because the community here is so great and different. But I'm not one to just super jump into social things. I've been very blessed in my life to have lots of friends who are very outgoing and just kind of pull me along. And so I end up knowing, and so I just end up getting to know lots of people. And that's kind of exactly what happened here too. I was very blessed to meet a couple of people that were already very entrenched and very involved in Radiant, who everybody already knew, and they just kind of pulled me along for the ride. And
so you're not attending services because there aren't really many, but you're meeting people. And then like Grace introduces you to Josie Jimenez, and you did like a grace and forgiveness kind of study together with a group of gals in Visalia. That was over the summer, was it? Or?
It's still kind of continuing. I guess there are different phases. So there's like grace and forgiveness, hearing the voice of God.
I thought you just did forgiveness once and it was over with.
No, it's kind of ongoing. It's an ongoing thing.
Interesting.
And I guess we're starting the Heart of Darkness soon. But yeah, right before that, I was talking to her and I was just kind of like, hey, I don't know what to do next. And I guess that's part of what you learn is that God doesn't require you to do anything next, just to, have faith in God and to show, and to just believe, or you don't have to show anything.
Trust.
And
just
trust.
Take the next step.
That God's leading you in the right direction. But I was at a crossroads because I didn't know what to do next. I was like, okay, I'm meeting all these people. I'm becoming like entrenched and I feel great. And I guess the high that I was riding from my initial experience with God and meeting all of these wonderful people in this community was starting to like kind of dwindle a little bit. I was starting to go back to a norm. And I didn't know what to do next. I was like, okay, am I supposed to feel like this all the time, the presence of God all the time and just be absolutely wonderful and starstruck. And just completely bask in God's glory. Or am I supposed to be here? Or am I supposed to be here? Like what is, what are you supposed to feel? Like, where am I supposed to go next? And that's when we started the reading and stuff like that. And that's when I was introduced to Josie and all those other wonderful women who attended that.
So eventually you get to attend like an actual service at Radiant. What was that like? Some people, but then you drive down from Fresno, you come to a Radiant service. What were your thoughts about that?
It was very different for me. It was extremely different for me because Catholic Mass is pretty much, what you think of it, it's kind of like quiet. There's lots of like
reverence,
and the type of like singing itself is completely different. And even that, there's not like a whole bunch of singing. It's more so just like really, really long prayer. And it's very quiet, maybe even feels a little solemn. At least for me, that's how I perceived it growing up. But here, because I come to the morning service because I just get up earlier. It's easier for me. But so most of my friends weren't here, except for some of the people who decided to drive from Fresno to Radiant. They were here, but it was different. It was really different, and I was speechless because I mean that's the only word that I can think of right now. Because thinking back on it, I was just kind of shocked because everything was just so different. Everything was just so different, and not in a bad way, of course. I
get it.
I was just shocked at just how openly everybody was, how vulnerable and emotional people were, and like the singing was completely different. And I was like, oh, this is like, like I'm going to a concert or something. Like I needed to take a step back and just kind of like hands off for a moment and just and just watch. But it was really funny for me to look in on, because I was like, wow, this is just so different. But at the same time, for me, it's something that I need, because those are things that I have issues with, is being vulnerable and understanding my own emotions and what I go through. So while I was here, even the first time, I felt something, and I felt the presence of God again, and it was, again, just a wonderful experience. And I knew that this sort of environment, no matter how different it was, or no matter how uncomfortable it made me feel, it's what I needed. Because even though I may not be like singing at the top of my lungs, or like in the middle of everything, even if I'm just kind of like off to the side, that this sort of environment is what my heart needs, and what God has drawn me into. And that's a beautiful thing.
So because of kind of riding the coattails of some other friends you have, you end up going to New Day, like the youth camp, and you're invited to be like a counselor. Or to have some sort of leadership role with the youth. Probably because of connection with Josie and Grace. And and then you just have a wild week with what are just a few quick things that stood out kind of about your week with the youth, or what did you appreciate about that?
Well, I didn't go in feeling at all prepared, or
you knew you were going to learn or get more than you were going to give. That was
or at least that's the way that I felt. I felt going into that I didn't have the qualifications. I was like, oh, I've barely known God for a year and a half now, really? Like, even though I grew up religious technically, but I was like, I've really only known God for like a year and a half. I was like, how can they, once I found out, because I thought I was just going to help, and I was like, oh that's totally fine, I can go help you guys, that's fine.
I'll be on kitchen crew.
Totally fine. And but then they were just like, you guys are each gonna have campers, and I was like, whoa, they want me to take care of like high schoolers, but not just take care of them, they want me to minister to them and serve them emotionally and spiritually. I was like, I'm not sure that I'm qualified to do this. Because I can't even do that for myself right now. So the responsibility that I felt was immense. Because I'd never done something like that before. But I was constantly reminded going into it that, God will meet me where I am, and that that God has something planned for me too, there at the camp. So from day one, they absolutely blew me out of the water. The youth there blew me out of the water with their fearlessness and their courage and just their vulnerability. And it just blew me away. And I was just more and more shocked and thankful that I could be a part of these breakthroughs and these journeys for them that they were all going through. Because of course, they're all going through their own things. They're all going through different journeys with their relationship with God. And I was so thankful that I could be a part of that and see them and help them and minister to the ones that I could. And it was just an amazing experience. I don't know how else to put it, but it was just amazing to see how absolutely fearless those youth are in their pursuit of God and in pursuit of deepening their relationship with God. And
that kind of rubbed off on you, because you come home bold and you're ready to get baptized.
And while I was there, I thought about it. I was like, I was supposed to get baptized last Easter. I told people, I invited people, but then I didn't, because I was waiting on like my mom and my dad and my dad, who had initially given me books about God and stuff like that. And it was just like, look into it. I did the same thing about faith and stuff like that. He wasn't happy with the conclusion really that I ended up with, that I believed in God and that I believed that Jesus died for me he wasn't too enthralled at that idea that I came to that conclusion. So there's that. But aside from that, I realized that I was waiting for other people in a choice that should just be my own. That should just be between me and God. It's a relationship between me and God, between me and Jesus and, the Holy Spirit and whatnot. And I was like, in order to deepen that, I know that this is the next step that I need to take. And seeing the vulnerability and the fearlessness of so many youth, I was just like, I have no reason to not take the next step. I have no excuses. And no matter how many I could try and give myself, I know that it's not right. And I know that it's not enough for me to not take the next step. So I said I was going to get baptized, and I came back and I got baptized, and I was extremely emotional, and it was weird. But it was super great. And the amount of love and friendship and just things like that I have felt over this past year and a half has been mind-boggling for me, because I have never felt so cared about as a person. I've never felt so seen as much as I have been this past year and a half. I feel like the friends I'm making are real, because in this past year and a half, I've lost a lot of friends that either just flat out don't agree with me, or just because they live different lifestyles I don't want to be a part of anymore. So I've lost people, but I've gained people as well. And like I said, this has been an amazing year and a half. And I mean, life is full of ups and downs, but I'm very happy with where I am and where God's placed me.
It's so cool. We're so happy to have you around.
Thank you.
It's been awesome.
Church, this is Ashley Salgado. Do you believe Jesus is the Son of God? That he died for your sins? And do you commit to follow him from this day forward? Then I baptize you in the name of the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit.
Thanks for listening. We want to be a resource for you as you walk with Jesus. So please connect with us at radiantvisalia.com. Until next time.
There is a heavenly city that I'm compelled to find. Though I love the flowers and trees and the smell of the grinding sea and all the beautiful things here in life. And